Recently, I went to an FWC meeting, and this particular FWC meeting was about new possible regulations for green iguanas. So, if you don't know what the regulations are for green iguanas in Florida, you probably know at least that they're illegal for people to keep. And that is not going to change. Let me first start by saying that much. Basically, you can kill them, but you cannot be in ownership of them. And until a couple years ago, you also can't ship them out of state. So the only options are people with very specific permits to be able to sell them out of state. Now, when you hear that there are people who have permits to be able to remove this species, which the whole thing about green iguanas and why they're considered invasive and are basically on the same level as the Burmese python in the eyes of the law is because they are invasive and they do damage to the ecosystem. And what damage is that, you might ask? They dig holes in seawalls where rich people tend to live, and they poop on things, and they eat vegetation. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't eat any sort of animal matter, and they might eat some eggs here and there, but they really don't do too terribly much. Regardless, in the eyes of the law, they are one of the biggest. You better not have possession of these animals here in Florida. And regardless of what you think about whether they should be considered invasive or just non-native, it doesn't really matter. The law doesn't care, and that's fine, and I can get behind that. But since green iguanas are not able to be shipped out of state unless you have very specific permits, and there's also other laws that are in there that make it harder for the people who have the permits to ship them out. If you have these permits, you have to also pit tag, which is like a little tiny tag that you put inside the animal that can track them down. You have to put one in every animal that is snout to vent length over 5 inches long. And if it's under that, you can't pit tag it because it would hurt the animal too much. So there's no incentive to get baby iguanas because you can't even pit tag them. So it would be illegal to even have them in your possession to begin with if you even had the permits to be able to ship them out of the state. And the only ones who have that are people who had their class 3 and were already doing it before 2019. And that sounds like it would be a lot of people. But in the state of Florida, there are 277 people that legally can ship green iguanas right now out of the state. Okay, 277, or businesses, corporations, whatever, not just individual people. That sounds pretty decent, doesn't it? Except 177 of them are pet stores, like PetSmart and Petco and stuff like that. Why would a large corporation that is all over the United States, that sole purpose of being in that one particular location is to get animals from, wherever they get their supplies from and sell it to the market where that store is? So if the store is in Florida, why would that organization take iguanas from people who are selling them, or even hire people to go out and get them and then send them out of the state? That makes no sense because that's not what the business model of that organization is. These are things that came up at this meeting. I'm not just rambling about things that I'm thinking on the top of my head. This stuff was talked about at the meeting. The more you get into the numbers, the more ridiculous the whole thing is. And the people who are pushing to get these regulations changed are like, their biggest want in this is not to let everybody just get permits to be able to sell out of state. Their biggest want in all of this is to get the people who already, or the organizations that already have these permits, to actually use them. But remember those pit tags I was telling you about earlier? If you buy 10,000 of them, sure, you can get them pennies on the dollar. But if you're only getting a few of them at a time, they're anywhere from $5 to $6 a piece. And when iguanas aren't that expensive of animals, wholesale-wise, that's the whole reason that people would be doing this, is wholesale. No one's going and getting individuals and selling them like that. It's just not how that works. Wholesale iguanas maybe go for $3 or $4 a piece on average. Most of the time they're going to go for $1 or $2 a piece. So me having my class 3 permit, if I had to get my pit tag for individual iguanas to sell them, it would cost more for the tags than the actual animal is worth. There's no incentive to get rid of them. The only thing right now that they want you to do is kill them. See that Burmese python over there? Just kill it. See that invasive cat over there? No, you can't kill that. You see that protected gopher tortoise over there though? What gopher tortoise? I don't see any gopher tortoise. One of the biggest things that they were talking about is the protection of the animal itself. And when I say the protection of the animal, I mean, is it the humane treatment of these animals? Which I agree with. I agree with humane treatment of animals, regardless of their class or anything like that. Like if I'm hunting, which I do, if I hunt and I kill an animal, if I'm fishing and I kill an animal, I don't just kill an animal just because I can kill it. I only kill things that I have like a use for, that I'm actually going to do something with, that I'm going to eat, or whatever the case is. I'm not big on going down to these areas where these animals live just to kill them. So I don't go out. I see iguanas all the time. I don't do anything with them. I just leave them alone. I can't kill them and I can't have them live. I'm not messing with it. Burmese python's the same thing. I've seen a few of them. I don't really go out looking for them, so I don't run into them that much. But the few times I have, I'm not touching that thing. I am not touching that thing. It's not happening. I have no incentive to actually do that. And some people might criticize me for that, but like, I'm not just going to kill something just to kill it. One of the things that was brought up multiple times in this meeting is called the cobra effect. And the one gentleman in particular, I don't really know much about him, but he was not on the side of trying to get people to, trying to incentivize people to get rid of these iguanas, because he has land that he does this kind of, removals with the tegus, and he gets paid to do it. So why would he want other people to be able to do it? Tegus were kind of talked about a little bit, but it was it was mostly about iguanas during this meeting. Anyway, the cobra effect is back in, when the British were colonizing India. The British were like, hey, if you bring us the bodies of these cobras that are in the area, because there's a lot of cobras, we'll pay you whatever amount for each cobra you bring. Well, the natives, the Indians there, were very good at getting these cobras and bring them, because that's money. Eventually got to the point where there wasn't as many cobras, so they were bringing them from other places to keep on, getting money for them. So the argument is that the same thing that a lot of people have done with veiled chameleons. Speaking of the devil, here's a wild-caught veiled that I have. People got them, and since they're relatively cheap, but they're expensive to maintain because they eat so much, people let them go all over the place. And now you get a bunch of places, random places in Central and South Florida, where you can go out and catch them. Well, some people leave plenty behind so that there's more to breed and all that. Chameleons are considered non-native. They're not invasive because they don't actually outcompete anything in the local environment. And you can make the arguments all you want about that, but they are classed by FWC as non-native, not invasive. Now, I personally don't do that. I just go out and catch them. But there are people who have done that. And so the worry is that if you put a monetary incentive behind iguanas, that people will do the same thing. But the thing is, iguanas have been here for 70 years already. It's not a new thing. They are at a point where they are everywhere where they're going to be able to survive. They can't handle temperatures really under 50 degrees that well. You hear about the iguanas falling out of the trees. It's because they can't handle cold temperatures. And even though they burrow, they're just not adapted to the cold snaps we get. So basically everywhere above Lake Okeechobee gets too cold for them. And you don't see them really in the Everglades. You barely see them out in the sugarcane fields. You mostly see them around people in cities and urban areas where the temperature doesn't get too cold for them. So the argument that people would just leave them out there, I don't think is really a one that matters as much. The places where you can get to them to shoot them, which you can do, and people do get permits to be able to take other people out on like guided hunts and stuff, those areas are limited. There's plenty of places where people can't do that. If I'm walking through a neighborhood at night in the Keys looking for day geckos and I see 150 iguanas up in a tree on one street, nobody's down there with a pellet gun shooting these things because they can't. So a lot of these areas are inaccessible to the people who would be able to take them out of the wild anyway. There's no monetary incentive for the people who do have the permits to go and do it. So the hope is that they open up another permit system to be able to get rid of these iguanas. Because if they're that big of a deal and they're that invasive, wouldn't the argument be you want them out of the environment and not basically protect them? So the new proposed rules, which aren't, nothing's official, but the proposed rules are that they would open up a new permit that's a lot like the destroy permit they have now, where these guides can go and shoot these iguanas. It would be a lot like that. It would be separate from your class 3 permit. And what you would do is that you would be able to capture the iguanas. You have a certain limited time in which you do have to go and, show FWC in some way that you have them, how many you got, all that. And then you could sell them to a wholesaler who has the permits already to be able to sell out of state. And also, permit holders who let their permits relapse in between now and I think 2020, when they would make it so that those people who had that permit before would be able to reapply that permit. So more people would be able to sell out of the state, and more people would be able to apply to be able to sell iguanas to the wholesalers. And then to finish it off, instead of using a pit tag, they're proposing using some sort of like pen or stamp or something on all size iguanas, so that if you have these iguanas, you'd be able to mark them in a specific way, whether it be with your permit number, or they were going back and forth for a while on exactly how that would be. But basically some sort of mark to show that these iguanas were under a certain permit, and the details would be worked out. But that seems more reasonable to me than having iguanas basically be more protected than a gopher tortoise at this point. Again, not by the law, but that's just the way it feels. And also, FWC was talking about taking them off the protected species list, because if you did that, it would make it a lot easier for developers to be able to bulldoze even more of them. Anyways, with all that being said, I thought I would give a little rundown to the meeting that I personally went to. It was a very small meeting. It was not an open public debate. There were people from the public, including myself and a few others there, but it was mostly a tag meeting where the people who are part of this tag group were able to list their grievances and talk about why they were debating, but it wasn't like an open public thing, which is kind of a good thing. And at the same time, I've been to FWC meetings before where it was open to public debate, and it was interesting to say the least. But with all that being said, if you like my content normally, I know I've been slow recently. There's been a lot I've been trying to work out. But to summarize everything, at the end of this little section, I'm going to have some herping video where I was going out and catching a bunch of brown anoles and ran into a few snakes here and there, and I was using the GoPro. I'm going to try to change this content up as I go. Every single week I go down to South Florida and I do a lot of the invasive species removal, and I do wholesale them out to distributors, and I also sell them personally myself. I stick primarily to non-native and invasive species that I'm legally allowed to remove, such as the veiled chameleon you see here, tokay geckos, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know down below. If you want to see more stuff like this, and more stuff like I'm about to show if you continue watching this video, let me know down below. This next year, a lot's going to be changing for me, and I want to switch my content to be more of like what I'm doing out in the field, and you know, it's just been a very hectic time, but I'm kind of figuring things out as I go. So if you watch this whole video, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of, well, this last week and catching like 400 brown anoles and running into a few other things.
Corn chilling up in the tree. See if we can get Mr. down. And look at that. We got ourselves a Mr. Corn Snake.
What's up,
Look
Cornelius?
Look at that pretty pattern.
Yeah, a little blade space to his belly too.
Good stuff. He's out here looking for anoles just like us.
You want to see if he'll eat one?
Yeah.
No?
Nah.
He must have already ate. 224,
225, 226,
27,
28.
29.
Way deep in that shit. Where's it? Oh, I see him up in the to the left, going up. Yeah, he's right here. Damn.
Can you reach him?
Maybe.
There's his foot.
He's about.
I see him up there.
Got him. Got another ribbon. He was way up in a tree. He's doing his spins. It's funny, the ribbons down here, they got that line down the back.
Yeah, like they want to be garters or something.
He's got a little nub tail. A ribbon that was chilling on this palm tree.
Samnophis satura.
Just walking around on the side of the road, boys. So 199 and a corn snake.
There we go.
That's corn number 2 for tonight.
Off you go, Scooby Buster.
You gonna bite me?
200.
Nice. Got 2 corns and a yellow rat. Look at that.
Check it out.
Little baby Everglades rat. You can tell that because of the orange on the how orange the belly is. Heck yeah. Nice little rat snake. Another, that's a thick one too. Yeah, the ones down here, the ones up north, the peninsulars don't get, well, they don't get that stripe down the back, the 3rd stripe. It's only the 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't get that.
Yep. I found one over here that had no.
Look at that, another little baby ribbon. He's so tiny. He's so cute. And he's gonna poop all, look at that, he pooped on me. Nice. Oh.
I noticed it the other day.
Look at the size of that shed. Look at the size of this shed, bro, and it's so clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the stripes. Yeah, you can see the stripes through it. Look at the size of that thing.
Absolute monstrosity.
How big do you, so this snake's probably what, a good
the shed
stretch out a little bit.
Yeah,
So
like
it's probably, I would say, close to 4.5 feet. That is a monster shed.